Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Future of Training, a podcast brought to you by Train for Success and McGraw Hill. Today, we're meeting a profile from Dyson Group. Dr. Behnaz Gholami is Executive Director, focused on change management. She also works as a design thinking course lead at University Canada West. Welcome, Dr. Behnaz. We're so happy to have you in our podcast.
Hello, Sarah. Thank you for having me.
We're so glad you are our third invite for our third episode, and we're very happy that we could make this interview happen. To kick it off, could you tell us a little bit more about you?
Yes, again, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Yes, my name is Behnaz Gholami, and I have more than 15 years of experience in terms of like transformational change management, and human-centered design. I led complex transformational changes for big companies, small to medium-sized companies, and also I love to teach the concept to business students as well. So I have different backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds from like the Middle East to East Asia to Europe to like now here in East Coast and West Coast of North America. And my passion is actually make the change really enjoyable and a really good experience for a human during the organizational changes.
Yes, I read you said that people will actually become acquainted with change and be comfortable with it if they can see the good side of it. So that's your specialty, making people see the good in the change.
Yeah, I hope I can.
Well, you're definitely an expert and a leader in promoting change in organizations. I want to ask a little bit more about your doctorate. What motivated you to focus on leadership, learning, and social capital formation during a change for your doctorate studies?
Yeah, so maybe give you a little bit of background. So I was a techie, like I was a software developer engineer, so I used to be nerdy and code and everything. And then I felt like, okay, so I love to connect to people. So I did my MBA in IT management. And then I wanted to do more because I wanted to know more about people and this people side of business in general. So my PhD in Germany was assigned back to the multinational IT company that I studies agile transformation. So for those who know, agile is like a type of software developer that has the mindset change to it, the ways of working change to it, and also obviously the technical change to it. And then while everybody were focusing too much on technical side of the change, I discovered that it's actually really important to think about the people side of the change, the ways of working that they're change. It is changed during the agile, and then all these like mindset shift that they need to do. So yeah, it was like 4 years of experience participative research and observation to see that, okay, so how people behave, what are these parts of bites and pieces of the agile transformation. So I really figure out that so it's all about the leadership and learning, and then how team are formed and work together as a social network. So it was like a really interesting topic for me because, as I said, like the technicality of agile was like too much focused on by other researcher, and I wanted to just have a really fresh lens on it. So yeah, I did my whole PhD on agile transformation, these pieces of learning, leadership, and then social capital formation during change. And yeah, so it was a fresh lens to a technical side of the to people side of the agile transformation.
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
You're a dual profile. You started with tech and now you dove right into people.
Yes.
It's so cool. So you did your investigation for your doctorate studies in it. How did you execute it? What was your methodology or focus? Well, I guess we already know the focus. I guess I mean more, how did you execute it?
You know what, Sarah? I was a software developer, so I worked on this part of the software that, like, we were working like on the pieces of modules, or let's say the code of a software, and we used to just, take it to the organization and ask people to just use this module. And from the earliest stages, I'm like, okay, so it's not about technicality of what we deliver to people. It's about the adoption. So if people don't like it or don't find any reason to like it, they don't do it. So no matter what quality we are offering. So before even, I always say that, before even I know it's about change management and people's side of the change, even when I was a techie, I'm like, okay, it's about people. It's about if they accept it or not, right? So I had this perspective in mind from the beginning. And then when I did my PhD, it's actually 2000, we're talking about like the framework between 2010 and 2015. So it's, yeah, good old days. But the methodology, it was like, it was my personality, I think, as well, because I felt like when you're talking about change and people adoption and whether they like it or not, we're not talking about measuring, like, putting people into numbers and figures. I need to sit with people and see how they feel, right?
Talk to them.
And then, yeah, talk to them and see them during the daily life work and all these things. So I use qualitative research as my research, and then I was really blessed enough, let's say, I always say that, to at the time, like, design thinking and human-centered design was a really hype and hot topic back in Europe, specifically in Germany. And then I was like really lucky enough to learn it in the company that I was doing the research for. And yeah, so I learned it, and basically human-centered design was a translation of the qualitative research into business, so a less nerdy version of qualitative research into the business. But despite, like, academically, it's really harder, let's say, to publish qualitative papers or like all this, like PhD, because many people believe that it's blah blah blah. But of course, I want to shed light on it. We have the structured qualitative research, so it's scientific, it's valid, it's rigor, but still, like, it was harder. So, but I still used like human-centered design, qualitative research. It's what we call it also ethnography. As a researcher, go to the field and watch and observe and talk to people. So you are actually the narrator, let's say. So you are the storyteller by what you observe. And this is the way I am. I am the storyteller. So the methodology matched my own approach.
Yes, oh, that's so cool. You innovated in your approach. It's very interesting. It's good that you kind of like you yourself said that you're shedding light into these techniques to actually make it a little bit more humane. That's so cool.
Yeah, it was like I was really like excited to bring this into life, right? So, like, let's say if we can use it or not. Of course, it's those who did the PhD, it's not an easy road, right? At some point, you're like, okay, what did I do to my life? But yeah, so this was actually the beginning of the way that I'm like very passionate about bringing the human factor into change management.
That is so cool. Well, going into change management now, was that like your introduction to change management?
Yeah, so as I told you before, I thought that, okay, it's about people adoption. And then So I matured. I did a PhD. Back in Europe, honestly, it was not really a dominant change management field. We call it like people improvement, process improvement, business process improvement, plus people improvement. So something like that,
Yeah.
right? Continuous improvement. So when I came to North America, it's my story. Like, I didn't know what exactly I do.
Oh my God.
So I was talking to people like, okay, so you know what? I am doing something in between of HR, project management, and operations, which is not any of them, but it's just the mixture of them to make them work together. And then everybody like, what are you talking about, right? So
Yeah, like I don't know what's the name for it.
yeah, what's the name for it actually? Like in North America, and then I happened to just apply for a job. It was like a people and culture, which I really like. I thought that okay, so this is actually what I do, and then reading the job description, it was talking about the certification, and I felt like, okay, so maybe. And then I keep reading the job positions, and 99% of this job position talking about the certification, and I'm like, okay, wait a minute, maybe this is what I do. And I went to the certification website and realized that, okay, so it's actually called Organizational Change Management in North America. So yeah, and then my story began at the time, right?
Yeah.
So it's called change management, or specifically OCM, organizational change management, and it's actually yes something in something that in between, or like acting as a glue between human resources, operations, project management, and all the other all the other shared services in one company, because we actually try to help them work smoothly together. So it's part of building organizational capability. And then it was a learning curve for me. Then so then I'm like, okay, so I am a change manager.
That's certainly a story about how you landed on this path. That's so cool.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
So talking a little bit more specifically about it, for people that don't know, I guess, what change management is, what are the most important factors and contents in change management when related to the learning process? Like, what is relevant to make change management happen, like educational wise, I guess.
yeah, awesome. Good question, because your actually podcast is about training and learning.
Yes.
So I want really to shed light on it. First of all, let's just again repeat the definition of change management, and it's really simple. So you can have all this like a definition, technical definition, but like simply it's taking care of people's side of the change. When change happen in the organization, the most important part is like people adopt to this change, because if you take care of the processes and tools and do not take about people, the entire organization doesn't change, because organization is just a network of people. So change management is to make sure that people, processes and tools for change all working together. Specifically, the people are adopting and the change, understanding the change well, and try to just help them go through the change curve. So this is basically what we do, right? So what was actually
sorry.
your the other part of the question? Yeah.
Thank you for the definition. That really helps. It was about factors and contents, or more like knowledge that is needed for people to adopt change, or contents, that abilities maybe.
Yeah. Yes. So you know that your question has twofold, and I can answer it with twofold.
Yes, please.
So one perspective is like, oh, how what are these factors in the, let's say that the toolkit of a change manager or change practitioner that can help people going through the change? So this can be one question. Another question can be, how people can go through change, like personally, or as a network of people can go through change. What are the factors that help them? And I think there is an overlap in terms of answering this question, because as a change practitioner, I offer some help and tools to people. So these tools and techniques and skills and also the mindset help people go through the change. So I answer these together, so to say. So as a change practitioner, I believe that let's say that something that is really important is the power of empathy. And in many podcasts and in many speaking events that I talk to, everybody like knows that I am an empathy person. So I really talk about empathy. What is it? It's like, as a change practitioner, you need to be able to put yourself in the shoes of others and see that how they feel, right? And then see that, okay, so how this change is changing ways of working. So the action, the function, the thinking, how they actually are supposed to think differently, and then how they are supposed to feel differently, right? So I believe that this actually is empathy, and the tools of empathy can really be a powerful tool for a change practitioner to help people go through change. So then using this tool, you can translate the change into people's perspective, because no matter what the change is it like a change in your personal life, change in organization life? So no matter what, you need to see how people actually are going through the change, and then you help them through that. You cannot push people to change, because you will be not unsuccessful about that.
They will reject it immediately.
Yeah, they will reject it, they will resist it. So it's not the way it is. Like, let's say that you have the best toolkits, like generative AI, right? This like this hot topic of these days, right?
Yeah.
So the AI thing, and then so we or neuroscience, or all these things, like even human-centered design. If you have all these toolkits without understanding what people are going through, it's not gonna work, right? So I would say the first tool like is empathy and translating the change into people's perspective. Then the rest will be, so everything is about defining the change into the language of people, and then understanding the people, that how they interpret the change, how the change is translated into their everyday life, working life, and all. And the rest comes to the tools and techniques that help people actually go through the potential risk and resistances of the change, right? So
like preventive measures?
Yeah, so even if like, okay, so what are the things? So like, for example, this group of a stakeholder are interpreting change like this. This is how the change is translated. This is how functional roles are changing, how emotional roles are changing. This is how the network of people around them are changing, okay? So basically, based on that, we will figure out that, okay, from all those stakeholder, who is where in the change curve. And I keep talking about the change curve. There are like many psychological tools to see that where we are on the change curve. But usually it's just first we are just, in a shock or resistant to change. And then we begin to open up, so to understand the change, to take a look at change from different perspective, then say that, okay, so I can just adopt to change from this perspective, and then then you go through the change curve. Okay, so now I am adopting one step at the time. And then, okay, one step at a time, so till you adopt the entire change, right? So more or less, these are, there are like many, let's say, so to say, scientific theory around like adopting to the change and all the change curves, right? But if you just help people use some tools and techniques to follow them through the change curve, so to walk them through the change curve, it's actually the best way to do that. And I think I can go on and on and on. It's not easy to just apply some tools and then ask people to go through the change curve. There are like so technical ways to do that, right?
Yeah, I guess every situation demands a specific technique depending on the type of person and everything. But the key that you're mentioning is following through the change curve. I think that's the main lesson, I guess, and from that.
Yeah, so figuring out like which stakeholder is where,
Yeah.
right? And then help them accordingly, according to their status and where they are during the change adoption, right?
Yeah, so translating the change to people's languages and identity and their status. Once you identify them, help them through the change, through the curve. That's great. That is so interesting. Would you mind telling me a little bit more about the multidisciplinary methods you use? I think you mentioned before AI, but there's so many others.
Yeah, so before you started the recording, I was telling you that all these like methods that I use is just blessing and a curse. So, but because first of all, like you can have all the tools in your toolkit and then it doesn't work, right? But on the other side, if you know as a change practitioner, like which tool you can just, take off your toolkit and use it on the like during the proper time, right? Then it will really help. Because unfortunately, the field of change management sometimes is like really rigid and one-sided. So like one specific approach, or like there are people are like really orthodox or like really just sticking to one method, right? So I believe that it won't work that way. So depending on the context, there are different approaches to change, right? So when I said that, okay, what are the techniques, right? So there are like many techniques. So I am the advocate of human-centered design. So normally the field knows me from design thinking, human-centered design. But I can hear from this, podcast, I will say that this is not a silver bullet for change, right? At some point it works, at some point it doesn't. So you should be experienced enough or like expert enough to see that, okay, which toolkit is actually proper for the change. So if I want to specifically name some of the tools that we use for change, so they are, of course, human-centered design and design thinking. I use the concept of psychology and neuroscience in also like change adoption, right? I use also like these typical approaches to change that is like being in the field for so long. So there are different models of change management. There are different approaches to change management that as an experienced change practitioner, I know many of them. So they are all different tools and techniques to change.
Yes, I guess that there's that previous step of having that diagnosis of, okay, this is the tool that I'm going to use in this case, because if I use a different one, it's not going to work.
Yeah, you're right, exactly. So you're going to evaluate the change and say that, okay, so I need to use this toolkit. But I tell you, Sarah, when as a change practitioner, you're assigned to the change management initiative, And I don't say project because I believe that change is not a project. Change is an ongoing initiative at some point. You cannot beginning and end to it. You cannot treat it as a project. It's not a project management.
Love that.
It's change management, right? So yeah, in the brackets, I want to say that. But back to the topic, when you use, when you said that evaluation or diagnosis or like process to just see which toolkit you're using. So normally, like whatever change initiative we are assigned to, it's the company has a specific toolkit, right? So I didn't say that about like, let's say, I don't know, like about 5 years, 6 years ago, I was like, no, I'm using my own toolkit. They don't know. Right.
They don't know what they're talking about.
But I think that I learned it in a way that's okay. So the company is using this approach for years and years. So apparently the company exists and works in a competitive market. So I should respect the whatever company is using it and then add value to whatever the company is using, right? So not anymore I question the methodology or any tool that the company uses, but I respect the company's tools and technique despite like it is old, despite that I know at some point it doesn't work for their current initiative, despite that sometimes as a person, as a human, I have some kind of resistances toward using some kind of theories that I believe that it won't work. Despite all these things, now after years of experience, I am humble enough to say that, okay, so these people, right? So a change management perspective to doing my job as well, right? So these are people, they are used to these tools and techniques. So let's respect that, and then add to that. So then this way we can actually co-create.
Yes, work together.
The change plan together. Yeah, work together simply.
Yeah, I guess that's part of making them comfortable enough for them to be able to accept change, like learning how
yes,
they do
when
it.
I am exactly. So when I'm talking about people adoption, I should talk about the adoption of the change models, right? Too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very
Yeah.
cool. I also read that you work with leaders a lot. So I would like to know, what should leaders do for corporate learning during changes? What should they do?
Yeah, actually, it's a good question, Sarah, because like personally, I was thinking about it the other day. Like, okay, so like personally, like I have some leaders reach out to me and say that, okay, so we want to build the change capability for our team or for our organization. And I was thinking that, okay, so who are these people that reach out to me and feel the need to offer this to their employees or whatever they are working with? So who are these people or personalities? Because generally the general perspective is like leaders, or let's say that the traditional managers think that, okay, so like they have years of experience in organization, and then whatever functional role they have, they went through many changes. So because they went through many changes, they know how to handle, manage, and lead the change. So this is the common understanding or the common interpretation of change among like leaders, specifically those who are like experienced and then they are senior, right? But like some people, despite that they are seniors and they went through change, they reach out to me and say that, you know what, we want to build a change management capability. And it's interesting because despite their experience going through change, they feel the need to add the change management capability to their toolkit, to offer it to their team members, right? So those people are those who are, there are different types of people who do that. So some of those like read the concept, research about the concept, and know that without a proper education on change management, it's really hard. It's not impossible, but it's really hard to lead your people during the change, right? So they prefer to educate yourself. They are open-minded. They are open to learning and educate themselves, right? Um, then there are other people that's okay, so that had used like their experiences or any kind of things and method and methodologies and approaches they could to make the change work, and it didn't work. So it is like, okay, so we don't have anything, right? So let's search for somebody else. Like it's like a doctor. So we just,
You're a doctor, yeah.
yeah. So like, okay, so it didn't work. So let's go to a specialist and say that, okay, what's wrong with this? So why people don't adopt to change? So this is like the extreme point, like if leaders are in crisis, change crisis or change fatigue, or are really like puzzled, like what is going wrong? So they come to people like me to say that, okay, so what else you can offer, because this is the most we can do for our teams. So they are at some point come to this enlightenment that, okay, so yeah, they should add something to their teams, to their toolkit, to their knowledge, right?
Just infuse themselves with other techniques that sometimes when you're too focused on your own problems, you don't see a way out. So having that different perspective helps a lot to kind of like understand it again, like relearn what happened and see how other people fix it to see if you can do the same. Cool.
Yeah, exactly. So those are the clients, and then I really enjoy when like they see the things that change from different perspective, and they have these aha moments, and they are really grateful for this like training and education they have. This is like it opens the door, like the team begin thinking about other ways to tackle, for example, change fatigue, or like just somehow treat the change the other way. So those people actually, because this is the characteristic of a leader. So you maybe it's a really like changing environment, so you cannot really predict what is happening, but you prepare about that. And those leaders are actually those who want to be prepared.
Nice. Okay, very cool. In this podcast, we're fans of workshops, and I actually read that your strategic workshops as part of mergers and acquisitions have an 82% attendance rate and 4.8 out of 5 satisfaction rate among top level managers. That is super impressive. How did you achieve that? How do you make that happen?
Oh, thank you. So, yeah. So first of all, it's just, for somebody like me that loves to bring different perspective to help make change work, I thrive in an environment that is open to this education and training, that is open to learning new things, right? They have this growth mindset, and they give you the resources to do that, right? So shout out to those environments that actually trust me and give me the resources to do that, right? So I believe that's a powerful team to just support you and give you resources and give you information to tailor my trainings to the need of the stakeholder across the organization is really important. And then, as I said that, so those organizations or those actually clients that help me empathize with their stakeholders to see the world through their eyes and tailor the training for them, right, are the most successful workshops, right? So like the workshop that you mentioned, for example, was not as successful at the first time because we test the workshop before we roll it out to just, to be careful about the time and expenses. So this is my approach. I don't roll out big. I roll out a small. I test and then learn from
Strategic.
it, and then we go. Yeah, exactly. So the thing is that the workshop was not. We learned a lot from these testing sessions, a few testing sessions that we had, and then we customize and tailor the workshop to the needs of the different part of a stakeholder. So the workshop materials or the workshop foundation was the same, but the way that we trained the trainer and then we offered the workshop was exactly translated to the need of the target audience.
Right.
And that's I think that if I want to choose one single point of success after having a great team to work with, is just the ability to co-create any workshop material for the stakeholders.
That is great. Basically, listening and like being supported by the organization, not be left behind as a second priority, giving enough space for it, and the co-creation opportunities. That is great. That's great advice. I think a lot of people will be happy to hear that. I do have one important question. How do you ensure after you're gone, after you finish your job, your change management job, how do you ensure that the company will keep embracing change, or like after you're gone, how does it perpetuate your impact?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because as I told you, it's just changes initiative. It's not the project that is finished, but at some point I should do my job and say goodbye, right?
Yes.
So the thing is that I do several things. So the first important step that I do in the process of change management, and specifically human-centered design, is to offer the change and rolling out the change in a small sprint, right, rather than the biggest sprint. So my clients learn how to adopt the change, how to measure the change success factors and go forward, right? So it's not like one preemptive shot and roll out that, okay, so let's do it and then we are finished and then I say bye, right? I did my job and I say bye. I basically try to infuse, maybe the word infuse that you used before is interesting to use here, the mindset of a sprint, like continuous improvement all the time, right? And iteration all the time. So when you are doing the change plan, if I can actually train the team to do it a small one step at a time, collect the feedback, and then do it again and again and again without and at the end of the day, it's incremental. It will be big, right? But then it's like through a small iterative sprint, right? So that's why the team actually learns how to maintain the momentum, right?
Yes.
So if I can actually train my clients and the transformation team to just be like that, and then have the approach to the implementation is like iteration by iteration, then I think that they learn how to measure and then actually, yes, as I say, keep the momentum. The second one, of course, I'm always there. So from the client that I work with, I act as an advisor. Okay, so maybe it's just one big project or one big training or workshop that we go for it and we do it, but then I offer mentorship and advising, right? beside that, so I always offer my help in terms of like if they need help or any kind of supervision in terms of new project, new initiatives, right? So yeah, so I make myself available. Sometimes like I don't hear from my clients, and then I go back to them, ask about how they are doing, and then how they're using the materials to make sure that, they actually are using or like benefiting from the materials that they learn in the workshops. So yeah, so these are my approach that my clients really appreciate.
Yeah, that like follow up that shows that you care.
Follow-ups, yeah.
Yeah, nice. I feel like we could talk like hours about this topic, but
Yeah, I can talk hours.
yeah,
You're talking to the storyteller,
Yeah, but-
teller, so
it's so interesting. Like there's so many facets that I would love to talk about, but maybe in the future because the time is a little bit
yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's getting closer. So I would like to know though, going back to you, how do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh, that's a really good question. So, um, I will be happy because it drives me each morning to feel like I can bring joy into organizations, right? I can help people with like creative workshops and trainings in change and innovation, right? Because as we are going through like, a more intelligence, like let's say environment, like artificial intelligence environment, then on the other side, the the importance of human spirit and creativity become bolder, and it's actually the paradox of like going more into the artificial intelligence. The more I think human feel the need to connect to themselves and bring this creativity of human being into the organization. So if in 5 years I am able to bring like the workshops or like my consultancy and advising services to organizations to help the organization be more authentic and then more creative through all people in the organization, through connecting people to their creative mind, co-creating any kind of change plan, operational plan, a strategic plan to the organization. I will be like really happy if I am one of the like, let's say that thought leaders to bring this concept of authentic organization into like future organization.
That is very nice. I think anybody listening can sense your passion and that you actually really enjoy doing this.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I want to do that.
Like I'm sure many more opportunities will keep opening up and you'll be able to do this for as long as you want. And well,
Thank you,
to
Sarah.
close it, thank you so much for accepting our invite to the podcast. I've learned so much about you and about change management, and I don't know, I really like what you do. It's very interesting, very cool. And now is your time. You can shout out whoever you want or send greetings to anybody that means something to you.
Yeah, so there are many people across my career that helped me, and then if I name people specifically, I'm afraid that I miss some of them. So just a shout out to my current business coach and mentor. Shout out to people that actually helping me across the, help me across the organization, like my colleagues, those who are my colleagues who are like working with me as a researcher and passionate about like research about change management and human-centered design. So, and then my mentors across the way. So, to actually maybe to name a few of them. So, my current coach, Mr. Sohail Rezai, my previous coach, Betsy Jordan, and my other coaches and mentors that really lift me up during my career and all the personal and professional challenges that I have. I'm really humble and appreciative. Also, a shout out to Phil Buckley, another mentor when I came to Toronto like years ago after my PhD, who actually, helped me understand change management in North America.
That's so cute. That's so wholesome. And thank you again, Dr. Banaz. I learned so much for accepting our invite. Thank you to anybody listening. If you guys like this episode, please give us a like. If there's any topic specifically that you would like to hear about, please leave us a comment about it. Rating us in our platforms really, really helps us to get more people interested into our podcast and into profiles like Dr. Banaz, and it gets more people to hear about these amazing people, these amazing profiles. If you have any questions about what we do as Train for Success and want to learn more about implementing corporate training in your own organization, I would like to invite you to check our website at trainforsuccess.ca. Thank you for listening to our podcast, and thank you, Dr. Banaz. And I'll see you guys on the next one.